All right, we're being recorded now. We're going to first go to the floor plan generator, the floor plan designer rather, and we can go there in two different ways. We can either click the floor plan designer icon up here, or if you have a picture of the floor plan showing, you can just click that picture as a shortcut. Now, once we're at the floor plan designer, here I'm going to clear the screen just so we can start fresh. Once we're at the floor plan designer, we can go to the room setup menu, which is on the right hand side, where we can select 1 through 4 walls, or we can also put garage walls if we're making garage cabinets. And we can also generate just custom walls, period. Usually, even if we're going to make some custom walls, we start with at least 1 wall, because when you click 1 wall, it'll put some lights in, it'll put a floor in, and it'll put the wall itself in. So that what we have right now is something that looks like this. Now, if you notice these little plus signs, the little 3-dimensional plus signs, those represent lights. If you don't have any of those, you'll get a black picture because the lights are off. And you can put lights on just by clicking this button over here, lighting. You can put custom lighting on. But to make it easier and quicker, we simply select 1 through 4 walls and it'll put lights in automatically, along with a flooring. Now, I'm going to select the autofill icon down here, and I believe I'm in frameless mode, but regardless as to whether I'm in frameless mode or face frame mode, the procedure is exactly the same. When you select a wall, but before I select that wall, over on the right-hand side here, I want to make sure that I'm on the right side. I'm going to put cabinets on the correct side of this wall. Notice this wall is rectangular in shape. It's a rectangular wall from the top view. And the side that is active, such that that it represents the side where cabinets are going to be placed automatically, is highlighted in green. If that is the wrong side, let's do it again. 1 wall, whoops, auto fill. Now, the program is asking me which side of the wall. Number 1, which wall do you want? And number 2, which side of that wall do you want to place cabinets on? The side that's green, notice if I change the wall side down on the right-hand side here, now the top portion of that wall, as we're looking at it, is green. Or if we look at the 3-dimensional view, we're now going to be placing cabinets on the outside of that wall. Changing the wall side again, the green line is highlighted on the inside, so we know which side of the wall we're going to put cabinets, whether we're auto-filling a wall or snapping a cabinet to a wall. So selecting wall 1, we come to an autofill screen. Actually, we come to 4 screens. One on the left-hand side, there's the appliances and cabinets, finished ends, cabinet width, and custom cabinets. What kind, however you're going to be filling that wall with whatever kind of cabinets you're going to be selecting. Now, there's a lot of information on this screen, so it's suggested that you click this little video icon here to give you a brief video explanation of how to use this screen. But I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to hit the OK button and place whatever cabinets are going to be placed on that floor plan. Now you'll notice that in one of those screens, I told it to place crown molding. What we're working on is making it so that you also have a choice of placing finished ends automatically. Right now, the autofill is not doing that, but that's what is being worked on, and that will be coming out as an update down the road. At any rate, if we put finished ends on here, once that feature is finished and finished ends are placed on in the appropriate spots, the crown molding will follow. Because watch this. Some of you may or may not know this, but if I click on one of these cabinets, let's say that one, and on the right-hand side, this is our quick edit menu. That's why it says quick edit over here. We could, of course, click the edit button by itself, and that'll take us into the cabinet editor to edit the entire cabinet. But if we have just a few items that we want to, a few of the more common items to edit, such as finished ends, we could do it right here. So if I want to put a right finished end on that highlighted cabinet, click yes there, and then redraw the cabinet and watch what happens to the crown molding. You see the program, if you have, here's what happens here, and here's the logic. If you have crown molding on the front of a cabinet, and then you add a finished end, the program automatically assumes that you want that crown molding to follow that finished end. If we were to take that finished end off, the crown molding would come off as well. Now you could put the crown molding on, you can override that automation, but that's the logic behind this side crown molding coming on or coming off. So now that we have some cabinets here, and by the way, some of you who've had the program for a while will remember that in this corner right here, we used to have the icon for the floor plan elevation for a given wall. That's been moved down here. There's reasons for that, but I won't go into them right now. So I click wall elevation here and then select the wall I just made, wall 1. We now have an elevation. When we dimension that, the dimensions that come onto this floor plan are the dimensions that that have been designated when the format key has been clicked. See this format button down here? If I click the format button and then go to customize settings, there's quite a few of checkboxes here that these are options of what you want to see dimensioned when you dimension a particular floor plan, wall elevation. And notice we have 4 different graphic views. We have wall elevation options, which is what we're looking at right now. But we also have cabinet shop drawing options. That this is the drawing that is shown in the cabinet editor, which we'll probably get to a little bit later anyway. Floor plan options, that is the plan view rather than the elevation view, the top plan view of the floor plan. And then section views. You can take a section right through any of those cabinets and dimension it. For example, if I hit the OK button here and refresh this, let's say, for example, I want to take a section view between this cabinet, the countertop, and the cabinet above it. I can hit section, click section right here. At that point, these directions tell me to highlight those cabinets that I want to take a section of. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I did a second ago, but it doesn't have to be this end cabinet. It could be this cabinet over here, that countertop, and the wall cabinet above it, or some other wall cabinet. It doesn't really matter. You just click whatever cabinets you want, and then down here you'll see view. So now I'm going to view that, and here we get a dimension view of the section split in the middle of that cabinet. Now, if you want this to be in millimeters, I think we have is Mr. Kerr here from Gavin from Australia. Well, if he is, they are, the Australians are in
Yes.
military mode only. And so right down here, I can't reach it because of the screen situation here, but underneath inches is another option that says millimeters. You can't see it because of the screen sharing restrictions here. But below this is the word millimeters. If I click that, all of these inch numbers will turn into millimeters.
Isn't it right next to it? To the right?
I have no idea as to where it is right now, Cindy, but it's over here someplace. I can't see it. Can you see it?
Yeah, it says inches, and this is Valerie. Inches and then millimeters right to the right.
Oh, really? I can't. Oh, there it is. I have this control window covering it. So let me hit millimeters. Thank you, Cindy. So now everything is in millimeters. You go back to inches. I'm going to put my little window back over that so I can't see it again. At any rate, if I refresh the screen, it goes back to the floor plan. Now this is the plan view, the top plan view of the of that floor plan. So now that we have some cabinets in the floor plan, and I realize I went on a little deviation from the initial idea of working on the optimizer, but the reason I did that is because most of this webinar is going to be about the floor plan anyway, so we may as well hit two birds with one stone. So we have some cabinets in there, and now I'm going to go back to the, and we'll manipulate those cabinets later on, by the way. But first, let's look at the optimizer. If I go to reports, if I click nested CNC direct or optimization direct, either of these two buttons, what the program does, and this is very, very, very important to understand, what the program does is it takes the last cut list that you viewed, uses that cut list in order to generate the appropriate parts for the optimization. Here's what I mean by that. If I go to cut list reports, where am I? Now, here's our cut list report editor. If the last cut list that I looked at was a drawer box report, this is basically what I'm going to be getting, a drawer box report. Now that's okay, except that's not going to work very well going to an optimizer because drawer box reports and door reports don't go to the optimizer. When I say door reports, I'm not talking about door parts. I'm talking about these at the opening screen here. We have three different kinds of reports. We have a drawer box report, a door report, and a general cut list report. Now, the general cut list report can also have all of your door parts and all of your drawer parts as well. But these are the three general types of reports that we generate. If you generate a drawer box report, if that's the last one that you had generated, and you ask for CNC Direct, the program's going to get a little confused. Actually, what happens is it'll send you a message saying that you need to choose a different report other than the drawer box report. Same thing with the door report. Now, if my last report was, let's say, case parts for the CNC, if I were to do this now and view the CNC code at this point, now next time, this is the cut list that Cabinet Pro will remember. Next time you are at the opening screen and want to go to CNC Direct, that's the cut list that will be used. So going to panel optimization now, we have a new screen if you haven't seen it already, let me go through it. Even if you have seen it, we need to go through it. Because we have on the premium optimizer, we have remnants still in inventory. And this is showing, this will be showing all the time. Now, if it might be a really good idea, because if you'll notice, there are no remnants. Now, what is a remnant? A remnant is a part of a panel that was cut out in one job and left over. But it was big enough so that you don't want to throw it away. So you put it in a rack labeled, and you can use it for the next job. That saves a ton of money, being able to use being able to use what normally would have been scrap material and being able to use it effectively. Because what Cabin Pro does is it actually stores those remnants in inventory. Now, when does it do that? Right now, let's say we have any remnants on this particular job. They will appear in blue, and this is wonderful. Here's one, and here's two. Notice this is a remnant right here, and this blue one right here is a remnant. Those are two big pieces coming off of a 48 by 97 board or panel. Now, notice it doesn't cut this as an L-shaped part, odd-shaped part. It cuts it as rectangles so that they can be easily put on the CNC router next time. And those that are chosen are in the parameters. We'll go over those if you want. Let me know if you want to see that. Otherwise, I'm going to ignore it. Those are in the parameters. There's some parameters that ask you what size of remnants, what size of these leftovers do you want to save? I mean, obviously you don't want to save little tiny pieces of scrap. Those get thrown away. But there is a point at which you want to actually save them. So you'll tell Cabin Pro that via those panel optimization parameters. And if you want to know more details on that, just ask a question. I'll go to it real quick. Otherwise, let's say we're just viewing this and we don't want to stop anything. We don't want to do anything. We don't want to, we can hit the cancel button and it'll exit out and we can do it again next time. Or what if we want to go ahead and process this panel or these panels, all 17 of them, fully, going all the way to the CNC router. Now, if you don't have a CNC router, this concept is exactly the same. Do you want to cut these out now? Are we ready to cut these panels out? If so, let's store these for next time. Because you don't have to have these utilized for a CNC router on the next job. But nevertheless, how do we save these to inventory? By clicking this little button down here. See where it says Save Remnants? Now, if I click that button, watch what happens to these blue squares where it says Remnant. They just turned into parts. They're no longer scrap material. They are now parts, and if you have a CNC router, they're going to be cut out. In addition, look at this over on the left-hand side. I don't know if you saw this before, but there was nothing here. All the remnants in this entire job, or excuse me, all the remnants for this particular material are now saved to our inventory. So I'm going to click the CNC button, and that's basically telling the program that we want to proceed. And I'm going to go over that message in a moment. So where the program goes now depends upon whether you have the CNC version or not. So in this case, we have the CNC version. So we're going to go generate G code or BSA code or woodwop code. All right, so I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to do the same thing again. But before we do the same thing, I want to go into inventory and show you something. Because if we go to inventory, setup, material, and let's just go to panel inventory. Here, right here is remnants. All it does is tell you how many remnants you have for that particular material. Notice for pre-finished maple, 1/4 inch, we have 5 remnants. For 5/8 pre-finished maple, we have 4. Now, where are those? If I hit the edit button, these numbers right here on the right-hand side, these pieces were automatically put into this little box. When I said a few minutes ago, when I clicked Save Remnants, it saved those remnants to this box, to this material. You can put it there. Actually, there is no limit. Well, there is technically. It's 32,000. You can't have more than 32,000 remnants for all your inventory, but I don't think we're going to go that far. For all practical reasons, for all practical purposes, there is no limit as to how many remnants you can have for a particular material. So yeah, if you right now you go around the shop, or have somebody go around the shop and pick up all the remnants that can be used and label them, put them in a rack someplace, preferably by the CNC router, and then enter them here. See, I can enter another one. I'm just going to enter another one, and I'm going to call it 20 inches by 30 inches. This is one that I found in the shop, right? And I'm going to add it. So now we have that remnant. And these are in order of dimensions. I think, I could be wrong here, but I think they're in order of square footage. I'm not sure, or it might be just in order of alphabetical order, even though those are numbers. All right, so now when we go back, we'll see that the number of pre-finished maple 5/8 remnants is 5. Now, if let's say the same job, I want to process it. We can go to reports, and now I can go directly to the Nessus CNC I could bypass the cut list, go right to the Nessus CNC or the optimization. If you don't have the CNC router, then instead of pressing that button I just chose, you have chosen the button to its left, which is optimization direct. So now we have quite a few more panels, but look at the difference. This is the exact same job that we just optimized. Notice here, that one is a 48 by 25 7/8 panel. Now, even though we have 5 panels in inventory, you might wonder, why are they not all being used? Well, there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, the option that we chose to optimize told the program, I don't want to just use the remnants, period. I want to make sure that I want the best optimization. And if the best optimization comes from using full sheets, then let's use full sheets. So with that particular setting, the program found 3 remnants altogether. See on the very bottom here, 3 remnants altogether. And right now, these remnants for that particular material are still in inventory. It didn't use them. The reason, because it was not as efficient as using the 4x8 panels, because the program will figure out your best yield using those remnants and using your full panels. Now, what if you didn't want to do that? What if you said, I don't care about yield, I want to use these remnants up because I don't want all this garbage in my shop just piling up? Okay, well, what you do at that point is go to setup down here, Go to parameters. These are the optimization parameters. Parameters are all over the place, aren't they? These happen to be optimization parameters only. And when you go there, notice it says which should be, whoa, this is, wait a minute now, which should be used. There's a B missing. It won't be after we get finished with this. This should say which should be used during optimization. Full sheets, leftover remnants, or both. Enter 1 through 4, see below. Now, obviously number 1 is right here. What does number 1 say? Use leftover remnants before using full sheets, even if doing so would result in a lower yield. Wait a minute now. If and only if we want to use remnants only, we put a 3 in there. Oh, let's put a 2 in there. Because the second one says use leftover remnants if and only if it would result in a better yield. I believe that's what we just did. So if I hit the OK button here, say finished, and then re-optimize. Well, that didn't change much. 1, 2, 3. Let's try something else here. We go to setup, parameters again, and right here, let's change that to use leftover remnants only without using full sheets. So if we put 3 in there and hit OK, and then re-optimize. Now we're going to use full sheet or only the remnants if we can. Oh, I see what happened. On that previous optimization, the reason it did not use those the other remnants was because the leftover parts would not fit on them. That's why those 2 optimizations, number 1 and 2, came out to be the same. Here, let me explain that. If you go back to settings, parameters, right here, I put 1 in, number 1, and then I put number 2 in. Notice that number 1 is the most common, because usually we want to use leftover remnants if at all possible. So number 1 says use the leftover remnants. I'm reading the yellow instructions down there, or the description. Use leftover remnants before using full sheets, even if doing so would result in a lower yield. Because again, most of us want to get rid of the scraps that are building up in our shop. But you'll notice that when I put 1 or 2 in, now what's the difference between 2? Use leftover remnants if and only if it would result in a better yield. Now, it turns out that in this particular case, that number 1 and 2 gave exactly the same optimization results. I'm not going to do it again, but they gave the same optimization results, and the reason is because the bigger parts would not fit on those small sheets after being used, after the smaller parts were used already on some of these smaller remnants. So if I now hit re-optimize, what the program will do is it will use the sheets that are necessary, that are possible, excuse me. It'll use the sheets that are possible. It'll tell you at the same time you highlight any of these, it will tell you which sheets are in inventory. Now notice this one says pending removal. Both of them say pending removal. We have a total of 4 remnants being used in this optimization. What does that mean? If I hit the cancel button, it will not remove those permanently from inventory. It'll keep them in inventory because I'm canceling this whole thing. But if I hit the CNC button, which means that I'm now going to go to the CNC router, it'll tell me that 4 remnants were used in this optimization. Do we want to remove them from inventory? And if I say yes, I could proceed on now to the optimization. Those 4 sheets, those 4 remnants have been removed. I'm going to cancel this. So, are there any questions having to do with remnants or that panel optimization screen and what you can do with it and what it shows you? Okay, if there are no questions, let's get into the design portion. Well, we've already been there somewhat. About half of the last 20 minutes or so was used in some of the design portions. So let's go to design. And remember, for those of you who came in late, number one, shame on you. Number two, you can get to the floor plan designer in two different ways. You could either click floor plan designer up here, or if you have a picture of the floor plan showing as one of your three screens, you can click it. Now, if you don't have a picture of this, yet you want a picture of it, how do you get it there? You go to view, and then down here, floor plan or current room, do not display, or yes, display it. So I've got it displayed. If it is displayed, you can just click it by itself and go to the floor plan designer. Now, before I start any manipulations on this, are there any questions that you might have, especially new people, about the floor plan designer or about any particular thing you want to see? Cindy, are you going to try to tell me you don't have any questions at all?
Everybody's on mute.
Okay. Do we unmute everybody? How do we do that?
You can.
I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to pick.
You can unmute one person at a time, Frank, if you want, or they can also unmute themselves as long as they're connected to audio.
Okay. Okay. Cindy, can you go ahead? If you have a question, Cindy, you want to unmute yourself?
She says, I don't have a mic, and she's typing into the chat that she says height of wall cabinets above floor.
Right. Oh, if you want to do that. Oh, there's a couple ways you could do that. That's a good question. Number one, you can just simply, if it's one cabinet, one odd cabinet, you can say, I want this cabinet to be a certain distance from the floor. Click floor, and then what distance? If you leave that blank, that's the same thing as 0, and it'll be on the floor. If I say a distance of, let's say, 100 inches, just to be obvious, that would be too obvious. How about 80 inches? That's still going to be pretty obvious. You see where that is now? The bottom of that cabinet is 80 inches from the floor. Now, what if, what you're probably asking is not how to move a particular cabinet, but rather all of the cabinets as they're being placed, a certain height from the floor. Here's how, and yes, you can do that. I'll show you how. First, let's take this, we'll just leave this the way it is, and we're going to clear this room. Okay? All right, the room's done. Now, in your setup, you go to setup, and that would be in, I believe, the building methods, cabinet case building methods. I think they're here. We'll find out. Standard heights and depths. Yes. Right here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different user-defined values that you can place, that you can define and or set rather, and then have Cabinet Pro assign those to a particular type of a cabinet upon initial placement into the floor plan. Let me show you an example. Cindy, can you, how far from the floor? Well, let me just make one up. Let's say, for example, one height from the floor is going to be,
She said 54.
okay, 54. And let's say another one's going to be the opposite of that, 45. Distance from the ceiling, let's say 5 inches. Distance from the floor to the cabinet tops. You know, these are to the cabinet bottom. These two are to the cabinet top. So let's say you have a 36-inch cabinet plus 54, was that 90? So let's say you put 90 here. This happens to be the same thing as this, but not necessarily. If the cabinets are different heights themselves, then obviously the tops of those cabinets could be the same spot, but the bottoms will not be. And distance from the floor to cabinet top, number 2. These are both the same function. It's just that you have 2 different values. And let's say we have whatever, 95. I just made that up. I don't know if it makes any sense or not. Now, where does that show up? When you design a cabinet, oh my goodness gracious, all these windows here. When you design a cabinet, you could just go to quick entry here, click the letter or type in the letter W for wall, and all of your cabinets in your entire library that start with W will come out. And as you spell this, it's kind of like Outlook. As you continually spell the word, it will look for those particular items in your inventory that start with the letters that you're entering. So anyway, let's say I put this wall unit in here and I accept. Now that's one way of entering a cabinet. The other way is just to go directly to the cabinet library and look at the pictures and choose it that way. Or the floor plan. So we have this cabinet now in the floor plan designer. One of the parameters for every single cabinet that we build is where do we want to place this? Initially, notice this over here under cabinet information says initial placement. When we first place this onto the floor plan designer, where do we want it? We could place it at the ceiling, at the soffit, from the bottom of wall cabinets, and then our custom values come in. 54 inches from the floor. If we chose that, hit apply and resave it to the library. Make sure you do that, because whenever you make changes on this screen in any of these categories and you want it saved for future jobs, you have to save it to the library. Now, these two icons up here are dramatically different. This one resaves it as the same cabinet. Now notice, what is that same cabinet? Under cabinet information, this is the name of the cabinet that we gave it, but this is the name of the library prototype that we chose from the library. If you click this button here with the arrow, then it will save whatever you've done here back to a wall unit. If you click this button, I'm not going to do it, but if you click this button, now you're creating an entirely new prototype. Well, I guess I could do that without too much of a problem. If I call that wall cab 2, for example, or 3 or whatever, and hit the OK button, it now saved it back to the library, but as a different cabinet type, as a different cabinet prototype. And notice the prototype has changed here. So, and the reason it changes here is because it's no longer the cabinet that you pulled out originally, named wall unit. It is now a prototype called wall cabinet 2, because any changes that we make now and we press this button, it'll save those changes back to wall cabinet 2, not wall unit. But now let's look at our cabinet library for just a moment. If we go into the cabinet library, these are in alphabetical order, and I'm going to look for wall cabinet. Here's wall cabinet 2. Notice the name underneath, wall cabinet 2. So we have wall cabinet 2, and we also have wall unit somewhere in here. Here it is, right next to it on the right-hand side. So these are 2 different prototypes now. Now, why would you want 2 prototypes like this? So let's take that cabinet 2 and bring it in here and hit OK. And so now we have 2 cabinets in our room. And let's say we want to split this by height. I want to put some drawers down there for what are the things called that you sprinkle on food? Seasoning. Okay, so let's say we split the height here, and the bottom section is going to be 4 inches, and whatever's left over is on the top. Hit the OK button. We now have 2 sections. That bottom one, it has a little tiny door in it, which you probably don't want. So we're going to change it into a drawer bank with 1 drawer. And now we have a wall unit. We have a wall cabinet with a drawer bank in it, with a drawer in it, and doors on the top. So if I resave that to the cabinet, to the library, what am I resaving it to? Wall cabinet 2, because that's where I pulled up. This does not change. This stays with this cabinet. The only time this changes is if you save this cabinet prototype as a different prototype. Otherwise, it stays the same. So if I click save that to library, now when I go back to library, we'll see that very cabinet different. So now we have a different kind of a prototype in there. So let's go ahead and look at practically how your question, how the answer to your question affects the program, Cindy. And by the way, I hope I didn't get you upset by picking on you, asking if you had questions. So here, if we go to cabinet library, excuse me, not cabinet library, we want to go to floor plan designer. Oh, I don't want the, sometimes you go too fast in this program, you go to the wrong screen. Okay, floor plan designer. And now we have no floor plan because remember I deleted it. And by the way, most of you know this already, but let me say it anyway. If you delete something or whatever you happen to do, if you click the restore button down here, that will take you to a restore function, because since we have started this, we have made looks like about 15 backups automatically. So when we cleared the room right here, this is what the program looked like at that time. Not the job. And you can always go back to that job because this keeps a history of what you've been doing. And every time you make a relatively major change or significant change, the program will do a backup. And how many backups? It does up to 1,000 backups per month. And then after the year makes its full rotation to the same month, it just eliminates that particular month and starts over. So you have a year's worth of backups, potentially 12,000 backups. And these backups contain very little space, so they don't take up a lot of your hard drive at all. Okay, so here, let's bring that job back in. What did I do here? 7A. Here, let me clear this again. I think that was the wrong job, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to now go to one wall again, autofill, autofill wall 1. We're on the correct side. Notice that the green side is highlighted. And I'm going to select wall 1, and I'm putting wall unit in there. So you can select which kind of cabinet you want to be automatically filling these spaces with. See, here's wall unit, and wall 2 should be in there. So here's wall unit, and if we looked long enough, we could find wall 2. Oh wait, no, we cannot. The reason we don't find wall 2 is because wall 2 has 2 sections. What you're looking at are only single section cabinets. Those cabinets that have been split either by width or by height aren't allowed to be automatically filled. You have to put those in individually. At any rate, this wall unit theoretically, I believe, will be 54 inches away from the floor now. So if we look at that, I believe there's a setting. No, that's for depth. That should show. Here, let's look at that. Well, here, I'll tell you what. Let's do this. If we take an elevation view, excuse me, of wall 1, I think there's a function that allows you to do that, to find out exactly how far that is. But if I dimension this, I'm not going to spend time in doing this, but these cabinets right here, these wall cabinets, should be 54 inches. I'm not sure if they are or not, to tell you the truth. Let's look at this. Oh, in some cases, you can place cabinets and you can tell them to, in the autofill feature, you can tell them specifically to be at this particular spot from the floor or from the ceiling. And if you do that, it's not going to change. But those prototypes that come in, any of these wall units that came in, I'll look at these individually. That's a base cabinet, obviously. So if we look at one of the wall units, that wall unit was initially placed 54 inches from the floor. And if we were to measure it, you would find that that's the case. But I don't want to spend time in going through the math on this. Okay, any other questions? All right, here, how are we doing on time?
Frank, I'm just seeing some stuff on the chat from Cindy. Can you see the chat, or do you want me to read what it says?
Would you go ahead and read it?
It says, I think I saw on the left, it said 10 and 5/8 inches between the countertop and bottom of wall cabinet. When the dimensions were showing on the screen. And then added filler to a base cabinet. And when I clicked on OK, it moved cabinet by width of filler rather than just adding the filler. Glitch maybe?
Wait, I'm sorry, say it again.
So it sounded like she added a filler to a base cabinet, and when she clicked OK, it moved cabinet by width of filler rather than just adding the filler.
Oh, okay. Here, let's go back. Let's go into that. Let's say we take this cabinet, this wall unit, and I'm going to edit that wall unit. Now, if you add a filler to this wall unit, let's add a left filler to it. I'm going to make it 5 inches so it's real obvious, okay? And that filler now is way the heck over here. That cabinet has shrunken to allow for that filler. Now, if you don't want it to shrink, there's another way of handling it, and I'll show that to you momentarily. But here's why this shrinks. Because now that filler, if I exit out of here, and when we snap that to this wall, wait a minute. Here, the reason that's part of that cabinet is, well, let's see, let's move this. Oh, that window's in the way. Oh, that's a bad example. If you, let's just edit this. Let me just explain this because it's a bad example since we're in that right next to that window. If I edit this cabinet, the two ways of adding fillers are as follows. You either make it part of the cabinet, and then when I snap this cabinet to another cabinet, it will be, or to a wall, it's going to be at that spot. Or if you, but the problem with that is that it's going to make the doors smaller, as well as the box itself, the case itself. If you do not want that to happen, then we do the following. We go to fillers, take that filler off altogether, and now our cabinet is exactly what we said it was going to be, 42 inches, because it's still 42 inches, but it's being measured from the end, from the one end of the cabinet to the end of that filler. So if you don't want that to occur, you want that 42 inches to stay there, then remove it. And I'm still going to move it away. Excuse me, window. All right, I know I'm overlapping that window, but, or door, whatever that is, but just to give you an idea as to what I mean, if we look at this, this door, well, excuse me, this cabinet, that says that we are so many inches away. I can't read that, it's really small. So many inches away. Let me make it bigger. Format, larger or smaller print. Make it really big. Okay, so you have, let's say 2 inches now to put here. What you do is you go into, you create a filler by itself in the floor plan library, or in the library itself for the floor plan. So we have some here, like this is a filler for a wall cabinet. Now, where does that come from? How do you make that? Here's a filler for a tall cabinet. Here's a filler for a base cabinet. And when I accept that, all I've got to do is change the width to whatever I want. Let's say 5 inches. I know you don't make fillers that wide, but just to be obvious, I wanted to show you that. So I'm going to change the width of this filler to 5 inches. And when I get into the cabinet editor, that filler is now 5 inches. How was it made in the first place? Number one, if you put your cursor over the prefix, there's some information over in the yellow area that explains to you how to use that, and also tells you the special prefixes TF, BF, and WF. Notice they are reserved for fillers. So if you have a regular cabinet, just a full cabinet, and you put VF in there, you're going to have some errors generated. And this is the reason, because the prefixes TF, BF, and WF for tall filler, base filler, and wall filler are reserved for fillers. And here's how they're made. By going through each of these categories and taking out all parts. Notice the drawers. We have all parts unchecked. We have no drawer front, face frame detail, everything's 0 if this is face frame construction. Nailers, nothing's there. Toe stretches, we don't have a toe kick, so it doesn't matter. Shelves, nothing is checked. Notice these boxes are all checked. Those check boxes add or delete parts from a given cabinet. So basically the ends and corners, notice that we do not have a left side and a right side. Those are unchecked as well. All we have in this is a full-fledged cabinet, but it is a full-fledged cabinet without the full part. It doesn't have any parts to it except the filler. And how were those parts taken out? By going to each category, unchecking all the various parts that are shown. Now, with the exception of this. Here we have the right side, we have a 5-inch filler. And then we can adjust the depth positioning and also the width positioning of that filler. This is usually done if it's a cabinet or if it's not being placed correctly on your floor plan. That's why this -3/4 is there. So that filler, in your particular case, Cindy, you would have that cabinet. I'm just going to move it out here. So I think I'm going to move it out here. Move it in the middle so we can see it better. And so we don't crash against any windows. So on this particular cabinet, if I wanted to put a filler on there, again, I can either edit the cabinet and make a filler as part of the cabinet, in which case the width of the actual box itself and the doors will be decreased. Or if I want those to be the same, I just want to slap on a filler, then we go to our quick entry. We can go to quick entry if you want. I think it was called base filler, wasn't it? Or maybe filler base. Yeah, F, here's filler base. Accept it. Give it some dimension. Let's say, let's make this ridiculous. How about 8-inch filler? Hit OK. And it is now ready to be placed. It's this little red line right here. Because the rest of the cabinet parts don't exist. They've been taken off. So if I want to snap that to the right side of this cabinet, we could do that. Now notice, oh, that was a base filler. I wanted to put it on a wall unit. Now I can still change it, but the error that I made was I made a base filler rather than a wall filler. Let's go ahead and delete that and do it correctly. So I'm going to go back here, quick entry, filler. Notice if I use the quick entry on the floor plan, we do not go into the cabinet editor. That's the name quick, because we don't go there. We go directly to the floor plan. So filler wall cabinet, accept. And again, whatever, 7 inches wide. And now I want to snap that to the right side of this cabinet. Now it's where we want it. And if I look at the cabinet, you'll see that is where we want it. Now, notice the height is a problem. So we could just click on that filler and change the height by these dimensions right here. Change the height to whatever, 42 inches, I think. And by the way, had I noticed that in the first place, I could have altered it right then and there. Let's take that. And let's go ahead and change and get another filler out here. Filler wall, except right here is asking us for our dimensions. But remember, this is the dimensions of the cabinet itself. So we would have to adjust that in the initial making of that filler. And I'll show you why this is the way it is right now. But let me put, let's say 54 inches in there as a height. And then when we take that particular filler and snap it to the left side of that cabinet, now we have a longer filler. So we can make those any dimension that we want, but when we first make it, let me show you this. When we first make that filler, it's best to make it so that it will reach the very bottom of the cabinet. And what do I mean by that? Let me show you. Let's take one of these fillers, doesn't matter which one. Let's say this 5-inch filler. I'm going to highlight that one. Notice I use the tilt button, and the way you use the tilt button is clicking it down, leaving it down, and moving the floor plan around with your mouse clicked down. So if I click on that particular filler, which is basically a cabinet, edit that cabinet. Now we're going to go into the floor plan designer. Excuse me, the cabinet editor. And at this particular point, we can adjust the size of this by its parameters. Here's the bottom height adjustment for the fillers of wall cabinets. So if you set this up correctly in the first place, you can put 42 inches in there, and this will come out to be 42 inches. Whatever these are two different adjustments. One's for the bottom height and one's for the top. Well, both of them change the height of this filler. This one changed it from the top and the bottom. So we have, if you enter 5 inches here, it will be changing the height of the filler going upwards from the top. If you put 2 inches over here on the bottom height adjustment, then it will be changing the filler by 2 inches, but it'll be going from the bottom down. At any rate, in a nutshell, the answer to your question, Cindy, is that you create a cabinet by itself, which is just a filler. And usually you want to make one for a base cabinet, wall cabinet, tall cabinet. You could make one just for one cabinet period, and then just adjust the height and the depth based on what cabinet you're putting it on. Because even though this is a wall filler, remember I told it had a depth of 12 inches, which just means that we're going to bring it out 12 inches from the back of the cabinet that we're placing it on. But if this was being placed on this wall cabinet over here, which is probably 24 inches deep, this refrigerator cabinet, then we would change the depth of that filler to be 24 inches rather than 12. So that, in other words, the depth of the filler that you're placing needs to match the depth of the cabinet that you are placing it on.
Cindy says, getting the idea, thank you, good to know. Thanks for the demo.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, what I'd like to do is go over some of these snapping functions. In order to do that, I think I'm going to delete this cabinet. I'm really getting, in fact, I'm going to delete all these cabinets. I'm going to go to File and clear the current room totally. I'll put a couple walls in, we're going to start a new floor plan. And this time, all I'm going to do is put one cabinet or two cabinets, a base cabinet and a tall cabinet. We've already shown how to autofill a wall with cabinets. Now let's see how we would make cabinets one by one, because that's a very common way of putting cabinets in here anyway, especially if they're custom cabinets. So we have a couple of walls, and I'm going to go to, again, we can go to quick entry if we want, or we can go to the library, the active libraries. These are all of our libraries right here. Or we can go directly to the library itself, which is down here. So I'm going to go to the library itself so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to pick up a base unit by itself. Where is our base unit? Here's a cooktop. Base of 2 doors. Well, I guess that's good enough. Okay, our base unit, well, 36 by 24. That's fine. Now, in the cabinet editor, we're not going to have a countertop on here because I want you to see where the snapping is occurring. So we have just a basic cabinet, and I'm going to snap this to a wall. See on the right-hand side here, to a wall. And we're going to choose wall 1 again. And now I'm going to move that from where it is to a different positioning on that wall. I can either click drag and then click a reference point, let's say this corner, and then move it anywhere I want. I can move it here and click, move it here, click, or I can move it onto this wall. And if I put another line in that little square right by the arrow, it'll snap it to that line. Now, if I hit refresh, it'll give us the dimensions for that. Whoops. Wait a minute. All right, now we want to put a wall unit in here. Now, the wall unit, I'm going to make specifically a different dimension width-wise. So rather than go into our cabinet again or our library, I'm just going to hit W for wall and just pick out a wall unit, accept it. And I'm going to make this one 26 inches, 27 inches wide. I just wanted it to be of a different width than this. Now, we could, even though that's a wall unit, I can snap it to the left or right side of that cabinet. I can snap it to a wall, but there are quite a few different functions here that you need to play with. There's no getting around just kind of experimenting with it and see what they do. Left front, left rear, right front, right rear. But the kind of cool ones are right here. Back to back, left to left, right to right, right to left, right to right, left to right. And what do those mean? Back to back is used if you are making a cabinet. Well, here, let's just do it. I'm going to save this one right here. I'm just going to move it over there just for right now. And I'm going to take this cabinet, move it to the front, to the middle, and rotate it, let's say 45 degrees. My first bump on this, my first click is to click again, is to click a reference point. If I click out here, it's going to rotate about that point, which is going to be crazy. If I click about in the middle of the cabinet, that's my reference point upon which it will rotate. And so now every time I hit rotate now, it'll rotate about that point. If I hit the refresh button and click that again and rotate again at 45 or whatever degree, and my reference point is out here, now it's going to rotate about that point every time I hit rotate. okay? So now, let's say we want to put a decorative back on this cabinet. How do we do that? Or maybe a two-sided cabinet. First, I'm going to edit this cabinet. What I'm trying to explain here, by the way, is what back-to-back snapping is about. But in the process, I want to go through a lot of the different functions of the floor plan designer. So I'm taking a long way around. So here, I'm going to take the back off. So we no longer have a back on this cabinet. We look at it, there's no back. All right, I'm going to hit the OK button, and let's go back to where it was. Now I want to put a decorative back on there. Oh, no, excuse me, not a decorative. Well, you could put a decorative back, or you can simply put a double entry doors, so that you have doors on both sides. How do we do that? If I click that cabinet like it's clicked, and I copy that cabinet, now we have an identical replica of that cabinet with the same dimensions. The only difference I'm going to make here is I'm going to set the depth equal to 0. If I set the depth equal to 0, then I'll accept those guys. Then all depth dependent parts then the depth dependent, oh, that's by a variable. Oh, puke face. Hold on, let's look at this. Here, I know, let's do the easy way out. Take the toe kick and just undo the toe kick, because we want that to be not on a door, not on a toe kick. So now we have a just doors and drawers without the drawer box. If I hit the OK button here, that little thin cabinet is right here. Now notice it's still a cabinet, but with all the parts gone. Now, if I go to snap that back to back, I click this cabinet and it's right on the back. So when I look at it, if I rotate that around, you'll see on one side it looks like that, and on the other side it looks like this. Notice toe kick is gone. Now we could have put that toe kick in there, but we would have had to take that variable out that we had before, having to do with automatic toe supports. Okay, so that's the purpose of the back-to-back function. What about these other functions? Let's say I would take that cabinet and I want to line up the left side of this cabinet, this wall cabinet, to the left side of the base cabinet. How do we do that? We go to snap. We could drag it and rotate it, and it's a big pain in the neck. Or you could use this little handy guy, left to left. Now, if I click this button, it automatically keeps both at the same height, but lines up the sides, the left side to the left side. What if I wanted to snap that cabinet left or right to right? Right to right. That's the right side of one cabinet to the right side of the other cabinet.
There's a question, Frank, from
Yes.
how do you center a wall cabinet over a base cabinet at the wall?
Well, let's just do that right now. If I take that cabinet, center to center from the rear, and then select the cabinet. Let's do that again. I'm going to take that cabinet, move it over here so you can see where it is. You click on that cabinet and you snap. I mean, you can drag them, but it takes forever to drag something here. You can say, I want to there's 3 centering functions, snapping functions. Center to center, where the rears line up. So you click on that and then click the cabinet you want to center it to. Notice the rears of those cabinets are lined up and it's centered along the width of that cabinet. If you want to have left to right, what does that mean? If I click that and then select this cabinet, my bad. Right to left, it's stuck. I would probably have to, you know, there are sometimes this gets a little odd, and sometimes these programs that we're working on interferes with some of these Windows functions because these are API calls across the Windows. But if we have right to right, this right side would line up with this right side. And by the way, right now, in order to have that occur, the best way to do this is to exit out of the program altogether, and that resets all the Windows extension parameters so that it'll operate as it should.
Thomas, do you want to just unmute yourself and ask your question?
Well, actually, it's me.
Oh, Lynn, okay.
Draw a cabinet. I have a, it's an office hutch. So the bottom is like a base unit with drawers. The top is an open shelf cabinet. She wants to be able to see the wall through the shelves, so it'll be no back, but it's 70 inches wide. So I'm going to need a center style support and then like stretchers or rails on the edges to put additional shelf pins. How do I do that with the back and put the style on the back?
Okay, just 1 second, Cindy. Okay, I'm going to ask you to tell me that again. First of all, what's the total dimensions of the cabinet?
The dimensions are 70 inches wide, and it's going to be about 60 inches tall.
All right.
12 inches deep.
And then what do you have?
It's 12 inches deep, and there'll be no back on it so that she can see the wall, but I will need supports for the shelves. So I'm not sure how to put a style in the back of the cabinet or a stretcher in the back and leave the backs out of it.
Okay, that is more of cabinet design as opposed to floor plan. What we want to do right now is stay on task with the floor plan, but I can help you on that individually. But basically, let me try to answer that question real quick. It's pretty simple. You would make a cabinet. You make it 70 inches wide by 60 inches high. And you may have to split that by width and by height into various openings, and then you just make a back similar to what I'm showing you here. And if you're in face frame mode, then you're going to have stiles and rails there, as well as, see, we're not going to have that here. But if we were in face frame mode, we would have the entire face frame on that back. So, and that's all you would do. Now, let me show you. I won't make the whole cabinet, but I'll just give you an idea as to how that works. If we go into the room information and we change this from frameless to face frame, and let's make a cabinet. We get to the floor plan designer, and we're going to make a base cabinet.
Lynn said that makes sense.
What's that?
Lynn said that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay, good job, Lynn. And excuse me. So if this is a base cabinet, we take the back off. And notice we have a face frame in here. So on that face frame, I'm gonna put a couple of openings so that we have a center style. If you want 3 styles or 2 styles, oops, sorry about that. And here, or if you just want 1 style, let's just do 1 style. You put 2 openings in there, now we have 1 style in the middle. And you want it on the back. Notice in the back, oh, you want it to 60 inches high as well. So we change the height to be 60 inches. But that by itself is kind of odd, unless that's how she wants, unless she's a serious NBA player with that drawer way the heck up there. But you probably wouldn't want that, so you take the drawers out, and so the doors go all the way to the top. Now that pull, you want those pulls on the bottom. So the location is going to be on the bottom of that door, not the top. And or maybe in the middle. You can put in the middle as well. At any rate, if we tilt that around, you'll see that there's nothing in there, no back. So we put this on the floor plan. All right. Now, if I right click, by the way, if I click on that cabinet and then right click, that's the same thing as clicking this drag button. Clicking that drag button and right clicking performs the same function. So if I click that and then choose a reference point, I can move it wherever I want. Now, I'm going to take that same cabinet, edit that cabinet. Oh, I didn't want to edit, I wanted to copy it, doggone it. Okay, we'll go back here, and now we're going to copy that cabinet, set the depth equal to 0 now, just like we did before. So the depth is equal to 0. But now if I didn't want any doors there, let's take the doors off. Now we just have a face frame with 1 style in the middle. So if I hit the OK button and then snap that back to back, oh, puke.
While you're at it, Frank, Zia asked the question that the base unit that you just made, is that how you would make an island?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, Zia. It's good to see you too, by the way, Zia. Now, if we look at this cabinet now and turn it around, we'll see that we have that. Now you can take those things out of there if you want and just have the style showing. I'm not sure how you wanted the inside of that cabinet to look, or if you wanted that at 60 inches, 5 feet, that's a pretty high cabinet. But does that answer your question, Cindy, kind of?
Yes, that's good. That gets me there. Thanks.
Okay.
I
now,
know you said the top one, say for size. What does the second one mean? Is that much of a when they're all in order? Is it only the top one it takes into account, or does it take?
Oh! I see what you're asking. Let me bring everybody up to speed as far as what you're referring to. If we go to reports and generate the pre-CNC processing screen, it has to be done from here though in order to get to this particular screen. And now we're going to generate CNC. Right here, these sorts, we have 2 different sorts. This is a really, really good question, Gavin. Thank you. Gavin, by the way, is an Irishman who lives in Australia, speaking to us here in the US. Very, 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 very good. So we, now, to answer your question, Gavin, your question is, is it only the first topic here, item here, that is used for the sorting? Absolutely not. Let me explain the screen first. These are 10 different categories of these panels, these optimized panels. The reason it's white and blue and white and blue is because they're different panels. The first panel is white, the first three parts that you see. And then these 6 or 7 parts that you see after that are in blue. That's for panel number 2. And then these, looks like there's about 12 of them here in the middle white portion. That's panel number 3. Now, we have 2 different charts here. One is displaying the order in which parts will be machined, and the other one is displaying the order in which parts will be cut out. So if I put square feet in here, over to, or in your case, Gavin, it says square meters, but square feet over here, now square feet is the first one, and it's an ascending mode rather than descending order. And then I click apply. Each panel will be individually sorted from small pieces, small square footage, to large square footage. So the smaller parts of each panel will be cut out first, and the larger parts will be cut out last. Now that we've introduced, so this has to do in cutout. Here is the display the order in which parts will be machined is exactly the same concept as far as the use of the screen is concerned, but this is, instead of cutouts and displaying the order in which parts will be cut out, it's displaying the order in which they will be machined by a particular tool. Now, the tools, as they exist in the tool library, that's the order in which these tools will be used. But when a particular tool is being used, what parts are going to be machined first with that tool? And that's what this screen describes, display the order in which parts will be machined. Now we can get back to Gavin's question. Gavin's question is, does only, I think this is your question, tell me if I'm right, or let me know if I'm wrong, Gavin, is the first category the one that is being used and the rest of them ignored? The answer to that question is absolutely not. The first one is the main sort. The second one is a subsort under it. The third one is a subsort under the cabinet name, if it's appropriate, or whatever sorts are here. Sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's not. So, for example, if we had width here and length over here, and let's say you had five sheets that were 500 millimeters wide, and then the lengths were all different. Well, they would all be sorted according to 500 millimeters first, and then the lengths would be sorted under that. So every category here under the category above it is a subsort of the category above it. Does that make sense, Gavin? Or does that sound like just double talk?
Yeah, it makes sense. What I'm trying to achieve is trying to cut the panel from one end, starting on one end and working clockwise around. But because I'm cutting the panel out before I trim the edges.
Okay,
so
that's
sure.
where you would use the X coordinate and the Y coordinate, or the Y coordinate and the X coordinate. Now, which runner you use, I can't remember. Oh, Camwood, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever router you're using, you're going to have to do this experimentally, and you don't have to. You don't have to waste material in doing this. You could use air cuts instead. And remember, air cuts are done by zeroing your spindle in the air rather than on the spoil board or on the top of the part. So zero your spindle in the air, about 2 or 3 inches in the air, and then you're not going to waste any material. The spindle will just make the cuts as if the material was up there. At any rate, there's 4 different possibilities: X coordinate, Y coordinate, ascending, or no, there's more than 4 possibilities. I think there's 4 factorial possibilities. There's also X coordinate descending, Y coordinate descending, or so you can change. Wait a minute. You can change each of these and change each of these. The number of possibilities that exist are 4 factorial, I believe. That's 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. That's the number of possibilities here. So use X coordinate ascending, maybe Y coordinate ascending, or Y coordinate descending, or maybe that one needs to be descending. Depending upon your router, you're going to have you're going to have a unique situation where it's going to go from one corner to the other corner. But based upon how you have these four parameters set, whether it be X coordinate or Y coordinate, or ascending or descending, is going to move your router from one corner to the other corner, or from one side to the other side, or from the opposing corner to its diagonal. However you want to do that. But the X and Y coordinate with ascending or descending is what you have to experiment with when you are in the air. Okay?
Zia has a question. He says, on my keypad on the router, the spindle speed is 24,000, but on Cabinet Pro, I set the spindle speed for 18,000. How do I fix that?
Can you hear me, Frank? Now, is it better?
Oh, that's better, yeah.
Okay, right. So on the two lines.
Wait, Zia, before you say anything, which router do you have?
I have the Multicam 1000 series.
The who?
The Multicam 1000.
Multicam, okay.
So on the tool library, you can only change the X rate and the feed rate, sorry, to whatever you want, and then it would tell you the spindle speed. So I changed it to 18,000. That's what I normally use on NRoute. But so I use the same thing on Cabinet Pro, but when I go on the keypad and I select a file and it starts to cut the material, it's telling me 24,000 as the spindle speed.
I would have to look at your setup, but most likely, here's what you look at. Number one, make sure that your router is not overriding the setup, because is this on this is a spindle speed. It's very possible that your router is overriding what Cabinet Pro is telling it to do. So I mean, so look in this. Number one, look at the setup within your router itself. That's probably the problem. Now, if it's a Cabinet Pro problem, here's what you look at. A couple things. Number one, you go to CNC setup, go to the tool library. And by the way, while we're in the tool library, let me just say very quickly, which is something that's not related to what you just asked, but if you go to the tool library summary, the order in which these are displayed is the order in which they will be used. And read this yellow area up here in order to learn how to change the order. At any rate, now that we deviate a little bit from what you asked, in the tool library itself, you can assign a feed rate, plunge rate, and spindle speed. If any of these are checked, then the program will check the material that you're using and will adjust the speed according to what your material setup says. So for example, let's say I have feed rate checked, but not plunge rate and spindle rate, just for this one tool. This, what I'm explaining right here, is applicable to all tools. But let's say, for example, we have this 1100 whatever feed rate, and we want to adjust it if it's adjusted in the particular material in inventory. Now, remember that feed rates is checked, plunge and spindle speeds are not. Let's go to the material library now. Setup, material, panel inventory. If we select any of these, if we edit one of those, over here, we have default percent of default CNC speed feed rate. So if I said 70%, 70 with just no percent sign, and I put here 10, and I put here 120. Now here's what's going to happen. If you have the feed rate checked on a particular tool, which we did on the one that we were looking at, then it's going to increase or decrease the speed by 70%. If we have the plunge rate item checked in that tool, which in our particular example we did not have checked, then it's going to decrease it to 10% of its maximum speed. But since we didn't have it checked, it'll ignore this altogether. And if we have the spindle speed checked, which we did not in our example, then it's going to change the speed by 120%, which effectively means it's going to go 20% faster than what is shown there on that tool library. But again, we did not have that spindle speed box checked, so this is going to be ignored. Now, these speeds, especially the feed rate and the plunge rate, will never go faster than what is shown here. This 3000, and by the way, you'll notice that these don't have units next to them. It's because they're scalar units, not vector units, and they are being placed in your code exactly as they are shown. So it doesn't really matter what units they are. It matters to you what units they are. It matters to your router what units they are, but it doesn't matter to Cabinet Pro. You just enter in the scalar unit by itself with no units, and that will be placed directly into the code. So your XY movement feed rate will never go faster than that, and your Z plunge rate will never go faster than this, because these are your maximums that you set. But what I just showed you, Zia, probably is not the problem. The problem, oh, there is one other possibility. Oh wait, I think there may be another possibility. Excuse me. CNC options. There is a place here where we have rates here. You might want to check the small parts, because you can actually make it go faster or smaller here. And you can have the specified speed here. This, I forgot about this particular area when I was answering your question, because This is an area that Cabinet Pro puts limits on the speed when cutting out smaller parts. But if it's going faster, 24,000, then it probably is not this area. I would check, I think the most probable possibility is what I said in the first place, and that is the settings of your machine are overriding what Cabinet Pro is telling it. If it's still a problem after you check those things, give me a call and we can get together, Zia, and I'll get on your computer
Yeah, no
and
problem.
figure out what it is.
'Cause
What's
when I
that?
was when I was on en route on a different software, it was actually going 18,000, but on Cabinet Pro it was going 24,000. So I wasn't too sure if it was my router or if it was Cabinet Pro. So if there's anything, I'll call you and we could probably.
Okay, another thing that you might want to look at is the code itself. So let's say, for example, you check those things and and you can't figure out what's wrong. Well, do this. Go to reports. Wait a minute. First, go to CNC setup. Go to general CNC options. And on your preferences, make sure you're viewing the internal CNC simulator and the files, because the files is what we really want to see. On your multicam, that's just G code, so it should be pretty easy to look at. You go to reports and nested CNC. Come on, program, move it. I know we're 5 minutes over, but let's just stay for a little bit longer, okay? Here, if we look at this code, oh, puke face, I should have done one cabinet. Oh, here we go. We'll give you a chance to get some water. Or another drink. Oh my gosh, what's going on here? If it's going as slow as it is right here, 2 reasons. Number one, I'm on a slow computer, and number 2, we can have a lot of machining going on. This is for, okay, here we go. Now, on your, if you have 4 of these things showing, whatever it happens to be, you can click on one of them, one of the pictures, click on the picture again, and it'll go back to 4 windows. You click on any of those windows, and that window takes precedence. Click on that window again, you go back to 4. So I'm going to look at the code. On the code, look for this F value. The F value is feed rate. And that feed rate, it is not just feed rate. Feed rate is like G01 or G1. That's when it's actually cutting into your board. Notice this is 200, much less than when it's in the air. The G0 is when it's in the air, and that's when it's moving out. It's going really fast. See, that's your maximum XY speed. So look for the F value and see if that's there, or if it may even not even be there. We might have to change your post a little bit to put it there. But look for your F value, see if there is a 18,000 or 24,000 or whatever. And if it's 24,000, then Cabinet Pro is setting it, and we have to figure out why. And to figure out why, review what I explained in the last 5-10 minutes.